Hey everybody, welcome to the Put 'em Back podcast. I'm your host, Casey Davidson, founder of Toadfish and the Toadfish Conservation Coalition. This is our crab episode, and I'm so excited. We are joined by Tia Clark. She is a native of Charleston, South Carolina, is an amazing entrepreneur, so many things, soon to be, creating her own documentary series. She's in so many things, but we're just delighted to have Tia from Crabbing with Tia. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're just delighted that you're here, and I can't wait to dig in and find out so many things about blue crabs that I didn't know. I grew up in Beaufort my whole life, but it's amazing when you get to sit down with folks like you that are just so knowledgeable to learn about these amazing, cool critters. So let's start out. Just tell everybody kind of, what you do, how you got into doing it, and what is Crabbing with Tia.
Yeah. So my name is Tia Clark. I own a business called Casual Crabbing with Tia, and it's a land-based crabbing experience that happens in downtown Charleston. And I got into this because of my health, but not as I didn't say, let me go crabbing because I want my health to be better. I actually quit smoking cigarettes and went on this crazy health journey of having to find out why I was covered in hives and why I wasn't having the positive reaction that most people do when they quit smoking. You quit smoking, your health gets better. I quit smoking and my health declined. And so that led me to hospitals, to holistic people, to national allergy, and
crabbing is a cure. Just so it's just go crabbing.
Crabbing is
and
the
it
cure.
cures all your
I take that
ailments.
back. Nature is the cure. So I needed a way to get active. It took months of going through people to figure out why my body was reacting the way that it was. But I ended with this holistic woman who put me on an elimination diet, and then she suggested that I try to find a way to get physically active. I was working in bars, and so physically active to me was equating to going to the gym, and I was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to the gym. But I grew up in a really large family in downtown Charleston, and my first cousin was getting married, and so family wedding, everybody shows up. One of my cousins sees me, and he's like, dude, what happened? Because in January of 2017, when I started the elimination diet, I weighed over 300 pounds. And so when I started going outside to get active, I started an elimination diet, and my body just kept shrinking and shrinking. And so 3 months after this elimination diet, I go in for a checkup, and the doctor is stunned. She's like, this is crazy. And she actually asked me why it worked. And I laughed and was like, you told me what to do. Why are you asking me why it worked, But I lost close to 60 pounds in 3 months. It was crazy.
So with land-based crabbing excursion, so basically you book with you, get to go out. What can we expect for your crabbing experience?
Yeah, so I give, like you said, crabs are, for me, really, really special animals. And I give brief descriptions about them. I try to give all of the weird facts because those are the things that stuck to me. Because crabs are...
Tell us, what kind of weird facts?
They're very interesting animals. So crabs can live outside of water for up to 24 hours as long as you feed them and you keep them in a cool, moist environment. Now, with that being said, a lot of people go crabbing and they take crabs and they throw them in a bucket of water. If you put that crab in that bucket of water and there's not an aerator or oxygen being pumped into it, it's going to kill itself. It'll take all the oxygen out of the water. So when people are going crabbing, I always tell them, instead of just dumping them in coolers with water and ice on water, which is going to instantly kill them, take your cooler, pull the drain plug, have your ice in there in the bags, and then you can put the crabs on top of it. That creates that cool environment for them. I usually crack the lid if I do that. I use bushel baskets and burlap sacks, so I just cover the crabs with the burlap sacks and put them in the shade, and that'll work.
That's interesting. I do the same thing with oysters. Like when I do events, I put them in the cooler and I tip the cooler up with a couple, blocks on one side and leave the drain hole open. Yeah. It's the same situation where you want to keep them alive and so they don't filter the fresh water they're sitting in.
Absolutely. You don't want them just sitting in water,
No doubt.
So I think that it's really cool that, they can do, that's one of the dumb things that I think that they can do, is because if you would take it out of the bucket and just put it in a cool environment like a burlap sack, it's going to live fine. But if you put it in that bucket, it's going to kill itself. For me, that's one of the craziest things.
Yeah, sea creature that can't live in water.
Right? It's crazy, but it's for some reason it's just pumping. It's going to take all that oxygen out of it.
Makes sense.
But they're so fascinating because Their scientific name is Calonectus sapidus, which means beautiful, savory swimmer. The back fins and the paddle fins that make them swim is like their superpower. We have so many different species of crabs here, but they can't swim, and the blue crab can, and they're bottom feeders. So if something grabs onto the crab, it'll just release whatever limb it's holding on to and use those back fins to swim away from whatever danger that it's in. And those animals are smart enough to know, I'm going to ditch this limb because it's going to grow back.
Wow,
so they can do,
cool.
so it's like really smart, right? You think like, okay, this thing's so advanced. It's like, I'm in danger.
Well, that's kind of like the stone crab, right? Like back, I think they were pretty in danger, or not, populations were really declining, I think back in like the 70s or whatever, Fred, and they made it where you only can take one claw.
Yeah.
When you set a crab pot, you sometimes, the populations are pretty good now. I catch a few every time that I set a pot, but you just pop off one claw and then they'll regrow that.
Same thing
claw.
for blues.
Same thing for
Same
blue
thing.
crabs.
And that goes for the claws, that goes for the legs.
That's cool.
It is cool. And when they grow back, they're soft shell. So when they lose their limbs, the way they grow is they molt. So they pop the back of the shell in between the swimmers, cracks open, soft shell crab comes out. Well, if they lose their limb, it's going to take 3 successful molts before that limb kind of hardens. We caught one today, big claw, nothing on this side, but when I flipped it up, there was this claw that's like soft shell and curved in on the body.
Interesting.
It is very interesting. But then we caught one right after that, which had a giant claw, and then had another one that was hard, but it was like this short,
Yeah.
For me, that just tells me something about their life, because they have a very short life. They only live about 1 to 3 years because we're their biggest predator. We eat them.
So 1 to 3 years is the life cycle of a blue crab.
3 years is that crab was like a Houdini. Seriously.
So for those people that are listening that have never been crabbing, or for me, it's something I love to do with my kids. My kids absolutely love it. And you don't really need much. Tell us about how you get into crabbing. What do we need? What do we do?
Yeah. So it depends on what you want to do. So a lot of people they're going crabbing because they want crabs. If you want crabs, then you need to use the drop baskets. I love the more traditional way of crabbing, which is hand lining and necking,
What is necking? Is that chicken?
That's right. So it's the hand lining technique, but it was originally called necking. And it was called necking because they used chicken necks back in the day. That's
So
the
just to
only
be
reason they
clear,
called
it's
it
the
necking.
weight, chicken on the weight, throw out the string.
Well, now it's advanced. Okay, so
But that's how I do it. I take it,
but you
and
have
then,
the triangular clip, right, with the string that's coming off of it.
and then you slowly pull.
Yes.
When you see the line twitching, you kind of slowly pull in the
that's the
line,
advanced
and
way.
then you get the long crab net and try to get them before they let go.
Well, that's advanced. So necking started way back in the days. Like crabbing, blue crabbing, for me in my Gullah Geechee culture goes as far back as enslaved days. When they were given rations, they weren't given enough to feed their family. So going to the edge of the water, throwing a cast net, crabbing. But they didn't have that triangular clip with the weight. So it started with a chicken neck, and people would just wrap string around that chicken neck and then weight. They needed weight. Some people would just grab rocks that were next to them. I had this old head on the dock with me one day, and I'm explaining this technique and telling him, you can grab sticks, you can grab rocks, whatever. You just got to apply some weight. He goes, oh, we used to use old spark plugs, and just said it like that. And I was like, well, that's interesting. That's one way to find weight. But, these old guys are just from I was like, you should have invented that triangular clip. You'd be rich right now. I have to order so many of those things
You
at a
said
time.
something was really interesting too there, with just the history of it in this area. That's amazing to think about that. Back even slavery days, that was actually a means to catch the extra food
Absolutely.
that they needed.
Absolutely. It's insane. And it used to get really hot here. I actually looked this up. So it used to get really hot here, and in some areas
It's not hot anymore.
Well, back then when they didn't have AC, you know what I mean? We're living in the bougie days of Charleston now. But
Right.
back in the day without ACs, during the summertime, a lot of the plantation and slave owners, they would leave and they would go up north. And then all the slaves were here, not really unsupervised, but they really were, during the summer times when crabs are abundant, they were out on the water catching crabs, catching fish, doing all these things to provide for their family. That was one thing. You go out to the plantations, they dug all those holes, they dug all those trenches, hand dug all those things out.
For sure.
And so one thing they had was access to the water. And that was it. And so that's why I love what I do, because for me, it's so much more than just crabbing. I am of Gullah Geechee descent. I am a Charleston native, and I am hand-walking visitors and some locals through this tradition. Like, this is how people lived off of the land. Like, tell me what's more authentic for an experience than something like that.
Oh, 100%.
You know?
And it's fun. It's absolutely a blast.
It's a blast.
My kids go crazy when they see that string shaking a little bit, and then they're just like, they take turns pulling it in, and then to be able to try to get the crabs before they, scoot off.
There's nothing like it. I go crabbing every day. Today, these guys caught a crab that was 6.8 inches, right? 5 inches is the legal size. They caught one almost
Let's
7
talk about
inches.
that real quick, just for people that are just getting into this. So that measurement across the back of that blue crab
Across the carapace.
it's 5 inches point to point?
Point to point.
Point to
across
point.
the width. And sometimes the shells are small, but then you have these really defined points coming off of the end. So I tell everybody to measure it. But it's crazy because, living here, when people see dolphins, we're like, oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I still go, oh, my God, dolphin every single time.
For
but
sure.
I did that with Andrew Wonderly from Waterkeepers once. We were out on the boat.
He was
and
a
I
guest on
like,
the podcast a few months
I
ago.
love Andrew.
Yeah.
He's the best. And I'm actually on the board of Waterkeepers as
wonderful.
well. And so he had me out on the boat. I think we were filming something. And I was like, oh, my God, dolphin. And Andrew looked at me and he was like, aren't you from here? And I was like, yes, but I still feel like that every time. And like the thing you said about your kids, it's like there's nothing like seeing that beautiful blue crab come out of that water. The color is so different from crab to crab. And I mean, today this kid caught this crab and I was like, oh my God. And they were looking at me like, don't you do this every day? And I was so excited. I'm like, I don't think that excitement goes away,
For sure. I'm talking about the color. I love to teach my kids, obviously the difference between the male and the female.
Mm-hmm.
And, you have the red nail polish, I like to say, on the end of the claws of the females. How do you feel about harvesting male versus female crabs? Is there a sustainable way to do both? Harvest both male and female?
Yeah.
And then also, are there certain times of the year that you don't take female crabs?
Well, that's a good question. When the bite slows down. So, like right now, we're abundant. There's so many crabs. We have no problem taking males and females right now. But I mean, honestly, you could take the females when you get them. The time you don't want to take them is when they're pregnant. When they're under 5 inches and when they're pregnant, you're affecting the population.
So that's a big point I wanted to get to, is we call them sponge crabs.
Yes.
And so when you see a female crab, and Tia, you could tell me if I'm not explaining this correctly, but you'll see on the underside, the white underside of that female crab, there'll be this thing that looks like a sponge. Mm-hmm. It's like an orangey colored sponge. And amazingly, inside that female crab, I've read that the average female, there's a range obviously, but the average I think is over 2 million eggs in that sponge.
2 to 3.
And so one traditional thing in, here in the Low Country was she crab soup.
Yeah.
And that was primarily what made she crab soup was the roe, the sponge from
Not the sponge.
The roe portion.
Yeah.
Yes.
The unfertilized eggs is the roe, and that's what you find underneath the carapace.
Yes.
What you see, the exposed eggs that you see is the sponge. Those are fertilized eggs. Those are protected here. You can't keep those. You can't harvest anything from those. They have to be immediately returned to the water.
Correct.
But when you catch a female crab like today, when I cracked open that shell, there was one that was so rich with roe. That's that ingredient for
Got
she
it. But they
crab
no
soup.
longer use that in she crab soup, or do people still put that in?
If it's authentic, people still put it in, But I mean, a lot of people don't go through the trouble for it anymore,
Right.
But I always tell my guests, I'm like, it's called she crab soup for a reason. If you're making she crab soup and you don't have roe in it, that's just crab soup. It has to have the female, the unfertilized eggs, for it to really be an authentic she crab soup. That's why it's not called he crab soup. It's called she crab. There's a difference. The roe isn't in the male
I don't know
crabs.
where I'm going with this, but I mean, I think like there's got to be some conservational benefit of letting a lot of the females go and keeping them in the population.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it depends on where it is, though, too. Like up north, they can't keep females, and that's because the further north you go, the shorter the seasons. They can't crab all year. I tell people, if you go to Maryland and you're not eating crabs that specifically say this is from the Chesapeake, there's a strong chance that you're eating crabs from South Carolina and
Oh,
Louisiana.
100%. I think that's kind of the more negative side of this conversation around crabs is the Chesapeake Bay. They've had a huge decline in crab populations over the last couple of decades. And honestly, if you read some of the stuff that the DNR's put out, we've actually had a significant drop with the data that they came out with in 2023. That we've had a big decline of blue crab populations overall.
Well,
for various reasons, habitat degradation, obviously water quality becomes a major climate change. But that recently led to some new legislation being passed just this year.
Yes.
For blue crabs.
Yes. And I'm a member of the Marine Advisory Committee, so we had a lot to do with that, which is great, I think, because it's for the species. Those decisions are made and those regulations are set for the species, not for businesses, not for anybody else. It's our responsibility. If we use this water, we harvest these things to make sure that they can thrive, And for me, that's part of the conservation work that I do.
Yeah, so I think the big changes that I saw that were interesting, one, if you are going to do recreational crabbing, which you're allowed to in the state of South Carolina, you can set 2 crab pots yourself.
Are you talking about commercial pots?
No, for recreational. Like if you are just a recreational guy, you can set your own 2 pots in the river, and you can
Those
now
are
buy
commercial pots that you're talking about. You're talking about the big square commercial pots.
Yeah, you can set those recreationally as well.
Yes, I thought.
Yes,
you were
I'm talking about the
other
big
ones.
square
Yes.
pots, and the change there was that they added where you have to have these
escape rings.
Yeah. Which I thought is really neat, but that was something new, right? So I had to go out and get those rings to add to my pots.
Yes.
So that the smaller crabs can get out.
Yes.
Because the other thing, if you're going to be running the big square pots that go on the bottom, you've got to check them really frequently because they kind of become a perpetual kill cycle, right? Like if you don't check them,
you don't leave
the
them.
crabs stay in there, and then the crabs that are in will start
eating the other ones,
eating each other, and
absolutely.
then it just becomes this perpetual cycle.
I would say you can do it every day, every 2 days, really. But I do find, for me and for other recreational people, they really are not using the pots. The only recreational people that are using those pots are really people that own boats or have their own docks. No other recreational crabber is lugging around a commercial trap.
Yeah, I mean, I do it because I have a boat.
Of course,
but
that's why I'm just saying.
Unfortunately, I had really 2 good pots, and unfortunately, I think they got stolen, maybe by a commercial crabber or cut or something like that.
I would say cut. So I argue all the time about access and how nobody owns the water, right? But I will tell you, if you are recreationally putting out commercial pots somewhere where there may be a string of commercial pots, they're going to get cut. They're going to disappear in the middle of the night. We'll just say that.
I know.
And it's not even because they want your crabs.
It was my girls had given it to me as Father's Day gift, so I was pretty sad about it.
Oh, that is.
But now we switched over. Now we're going down. We have a few spots so we can do the hand lining.
And if you have your own dock, that's where you put those things up. I'm not saying not to do it. They don't own the water. But a lot of these guys have been crabbing for 30 plus years, and they're not going to let. In the Geechee culture, they say either you binya or you kamya. Binya is a native, kamya is to everybody else. To those guys, this is some kamya with a boat that moved there that just started dropping pots somewhere. Those guys are not.
That's
having
not
it.
me, I promise.
I know, but they're not having that at all. I do want to make a point though about those escape rings. DNR has dropped them off to the tackle shops. You don't have to purchase them. So if anybody is out there that has their pot that's worried that they're not compliant now, yes. You can just stop by Hadge Rolls. They have them at the front.
That's great.
I mean, easily to put them in. Yeah. So it's not like they're saying, you have to do this thing, go spend all this money. They know you got pots. They're trying to make it as easy as possible, to update them. So.
And then the other change, which I don't think is going to have a huge impact because, recreationally, I don't think you ever harvest more than a bushel. But I think they dropped it from 2 to 1 bushel.
Yeah, but you don't know anybody catching a bushel of crabs.
No, and that's one point that I wanted to go through because I found this, just from my personal crabbing experience, is a little bit of crabs goes a long way. And I think I learned that a few times just doing it with my family, and you go out, you don't necessarily need a dozen. You don't need 15 crabs, because honestly you sit down and you start picking them out and you're 45 minutes in sometimes. But if you got, 6 to 10 crabs, it goes a pretty long way.
I'm going to tell you right now, and if you invite me over, I
Well, you're
require a minimum of 12 crabs. Listen, me and all of my other big Geechee family, they would be so upset. If my family came over and you had 6 crabs, they would say, I am out of here right now. But yeah, I mean, especially for people that don't know it. But, living here and growing up here, it's not about just that picking crabs. It's about the crab meat. My family used to make deviled crabs. So they would cook all of the crabs, shell them, but then they would save the shell, clean all that stuff out, make a deviled crab mix, and then hand stuff that shell back in and use that shell as a vessel.
Oh my gosh, I want to come eat it.
That's what I'm telling you. So it's like there is no wasted crab. It's like, yeah, they do need 15 crabs because they're going to eat 6 now, and then they need the meat to make everything
You're killing
else.
My whole conservation vibe.
It is conservation, but you gotta understand there is a way to do it. Like there is a way to really do it. For one, I mean, there's so many things that you can do. Like I said, the conservation that I do is to help them thrive. So everybody that comes crabbing with me purchases a saltwater license, 16 and up. That money goes directly to DNR and to programs like the SCORE program that
100%.
works closely with the oyster recycling. Then once a month, I host a volunteer event where we build these reefs. We put them out on the shoreline. Like those reefs, what you're doing is not only filtering the water, you're building habitats. If we're going to take crabs, we also want them to thrive. You know what I mean? So you can find a balance, and there's a way.
That's
to
a good
do it.
relationship there.
It's a
I
great
think every
relationship.
podcast we come back to the oyster and
Everything.
where do the blue crabs grow up?
That's it. Well, oysters are our keystone species. Everything's gonna collapse here if we don't have them in that water.
100%.
And so that part has been super important and special to me. I didn't know any of this. I went crabbing 8 years ago for the first time in my life. I grew up in downtown Charleston. I didn't go to the beach until I was 17, and I never experienced crabbing until the age of 37.
That's so wild. Yeah. When
It's
I was
pretty common.
it was very common. When I was in college at the College of Charleston, I was working as like a, on the microphone, telling stories, on the catamaran, and we would take school groups, and it always blew my mind that these kids live in downtown Charleston. It was like their first time on the water.
Absolutely.
And
I'm still experiencing that to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, I do a lot of work with SCORE, and we've been working on this grant where we've been going into Title I schools and teaching about crabbing, fishing, conservation. The stories that the kids tell me are so shocking. One of the first elementary schools in Wadmalaw, which is Wadmalaw, like right near the water. Some of the kids were like, my family told me to never go. And I was like thinking, what do you mean? But then it's like, you got to think like it's cultural. Like people think that the only way that you can enjoy water is that you have to have a boat or that you have to be wealthy. That is so far away from the truth.
I love that.
It's so far away from the truth and from everything that I've learned in the last 8 years. So that's why I'm trying to empower everybody. If you don't see a sign that says no fishing or crabbing, go use that water. Everyone has a right, and there is a place of belonging for everyone on the water. So besides catching crabs, besides catching fish, I just want to encourage people to get there, because for me, that space on the water was so healing, so powerful for me, so transformative in my life. And you don't have to be able to swim. You don't even have to touch the water. Just stand next to it, turn the ringer off on your cell phone, take some deep breaths. Like that space will move you. Like you'll start 100%. Things in your head will
you'll
start
lose weight. You'll become healthier.
You'll find your life.
You're totally right. I mean, that feeling that you get watching a sunrise on the water, or just like you're saying, the memories that I have with my girls, just going crabbing, going fishing. I mean, that's what gives them that connectiveness to nature that is the future of sustaining this for everyone and keeping it going. Specifically going back to blue crabs though, so I think this year was great. We got some regulations put in place that weren't there before on blue crabs. What are some other things that we can do to ensure the sustainability of our blue crab population moving forward?
Oh, the main thing, don't take the pregnant ones and don't take them till they get to 5 inches. I always tell people, if you have to go measure 2-3 times, put it back. You want to clearly know the crab's over 5 inches. If it's been over 5 inches, that means it has had babies. You know what I mean?
It's on the tail end of its life cycle if it's so short.
It is. 5 inches, they can get to 5 inches in 1 year.
Cool.
They can get to 5 inches in 1 year.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So when you catch the one like today, that one that guy got that was almost 7, that crab was easily over 2 years old.
That's cool.
Big, massive, big, long points. But they will get to the legal size within 1 year. So for me, get the license, give that money to DNR because they do a lot of work protecting these species. People have all these different things about DNR, but you don't have to fair DNR. And everybody always thinks of the game warden when you say DNR. That's not it. You know, there's a whole building that our tax dollars pay for where these people work. You can walk in there, ask them questions. They'll
Yeah,
stop
the enforcement
working.
side of it is so small
But
for what they do, and we're so blessed to have such an amazing Department of Natural Resources
It is,
here.
but
in South Carolina.
everybody, if you mention DNR, all they talk about is the warden. Some of the biologists that I'm friends with will tell me if they're wearing their DNR shirt and they go to the gas station, somebody's going to wave them down and they're like, hey, we saw these guys illegally taking fish. And they're like, that's not me, man. Like, that's not me. Like, that's all people think about. It's like the enforcement side. And honestly, if you have a license, you don't have anything to worry about unless you're doing something wrong. If
Yeah,
you're
no
not
doubt.
using this resource sustainably, then you need to worry about it. If you're doing it the right way, there's nothing to worry about. You know, I never understand that. But I just always tell them they get a really bad rep. You know, DNR just really does.
Couple more quick things. So, what is your favorite time of year to crab in the Low Country? Like, if I was to pick
fall.
1 month.
The fall. Number one, because it's not that hot and they're still pretty abundant. A few years ago, probably 2.5 years ago, I had a group of 16 book a private experience, and they caught 86 crabs in 2 hours.
In what month?
It was the fall. It was Thanksgiving. It was very close to
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I was gonna say for me, it's always been October.
Yeah,
like
October,
that October
November.
window.
Oh my
and I
God.
feel like the crabs, like maybe they're cleaner or something. Like when you pop them open, there's just like there's not as much stuff going on. I feel like they pick a lot easier in October, and
I don't know.
How about taste? Do they taste different at different times of year? Are they sweeter?
The
this time of
females
year?
the meat in the females are always sweeter. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. But the meat in the female is sweeter than it is in the male. Just like life, we're sweeter.
couple more things. When is peeler season? And let's talk about what peeler season is and why that's such a sought after thing and what that whole process
Peeler
is
season
like.
is soft shell.
Soft-shell
It's soft shell crabs. Everybody wants soft shell crabs. They're very expensive because people don't understand that. Let's see if I can summarize this quickly. So female crabs have I wouldn't say a terminal molt, but it's a last molt. So the males will continue to molt, which is the growing process, over and over. So they're typically larger than females are. But females will go through a last molt, which then will attract the male crab, and they do this very elaborate courtship thing. And then the male comes and he will hold on to her when she goes through that last molt because she's soft shell and things will try to kill her and pick at her. Then when the time is right, they'll face each other and they'll mate. And then he will hold her again until that shell hardens. I know.
It's like a love story.
I can see you about to
I want to
tear
see
up,
you
right?
show us the crab dance.
The crab dance. I do that with the kids on the dock all the time. But then he will hold her again until she hardens, and then she heads to higher salinity. So the girls need high salt for reproducing. Peeler season is early, like the end of March, beginning of April. But they're so expensive because they actually take this big trap and they put the males in there, and the females will come close because they know that male's there and they're going to go through this molt, and there's a chance that they're going to mate. Well, once they get those girls in that trap, they then take them out of the water and they transport them to these she sheds, is how they describe them. But most of the places that are commercially doing them, they have these sheds. And someone is watching these crabs 24/7. Because when they molt and they become a soft shell, they have to be removed from the water to stay soft. Because they go from soft shell to a paper crab, and then when they're paper crabs, they're inedible. And so you want to keep them in that soft shell state. So that's why it's so expensive, because someone is literally watching and waiting, and then they remove them as soon as they pop out. And they remove them, and then they refrigerate them, and that's how you get.
And how do you
soft
prepare
shell
those,
crab.
fried?
I mean, you can do whatever. 2 years ago, I only eat about one every season. But a few years ago, I went and had an oven, like one of those fire grills that they have over at Nico, and they did one with like these beans in this oven. It was fantastic. But the most typical way that people eat it is they season bread and fry that thing and put it on a sandwich, and it is delicious. You can eat every single
All
bit
right,
of it.
this one is I'm going to really put you on the spot. This is a real serious question here.
All right, let me get serious.
Blue crabs, steamed or boiled?
Man, that is a tough question. All right, so you got to ask this. All right, so I have to answer this two ways. I grew up eating low country boils, meaning they're boiled the whole time. I don't do that anymore. I prefer to steam. And I prefer to have them cleaned before I cook them. And that is because, think about this. When you have live crabs, usually they season the pot of water, or they just put them all in the back, they season the shells down, and then they steam them like that, right? But when it's time to eat, what do? You remove the thing that has all the seasoning, discard that to pick the meat. I don't understand that. So now I clean them, and that way I'm seasoning the part of the shell that's going in my mouth and the actual meat that I'm going to eat.
So Tia is a clean and steam girl.
Right now I am, but growing up,
man, oh man,
strictly boiling.
Yeah,
But
I totally agree with you. I grew up always boiled. But you're right. Like when you put the crabs in the pot, all the seasoning you just put in that pot is just coming off. So what we would do to kind of offset that is we would dip the water back out into a bowl. It was like our cleaning bowl that we would put the hot water from the boil. And then my grandma, we'd break them in half, and do that. And then you'd just kind of get like rinse almost some of the insides out and then pick them out. That's how we did it on my grandma's house.
Yeah, but now that I know what I know, I'm like, what is the point of seasoning? I want the thing that's going in my mouth. And honestly, my favorite way to do it right now is I do it all in one pot. I'll do a garlic butter one. So I melt the butter, put the garlic in so it doesn't burn, and I clean them and do the halves bodies, cook those for 8 minutes, flip them, do another 8 minutes, and then I take the whole pot off of the stove and put it on a rest, take the lid off, dump a bunch of your favorite hot sauce in it, and then I just pick the meat and dip it right back in that pot. I sit there and do the
that
whole
sounds
one.
good. Now
It's
I
so
really
good.
am crying as I'm so hungry.
It's so good, man.
That's amazing.
It's so good.
Get
I
that
did
also.
want to say one other thing, though, about the regulations. Most of those regulations that were made are for commercial crabbing. And before this year, there's never been any regulation for commercial crabbing. There have been over 400 commercial crabbing licenses issued per year. Well, almost half of that out of state. So there are people coming from out of state when they know that our crabs are abundant. I think they pay $100 more than any resident, and they can harvest all the crabs they want. Now, what they're supposed to do is report those numbers. I don't think a lot of people are reporting those numbers. And so all of those things affect the data that everybody was getting based on the decline in the population. There was a big thing about the decline in our blue crab population, and SCDNR held a bunch of public meetings where people came. And it was mixed review, it really was. Some of the commercial crabbers were like, we drove 45 minutes to be here from wherever they live, but they were like, we put out the same number of pots today, our numbers are just as high as they were. And other ones are going, we are seeing a big decline where we are, because like you said, there's so many things that matter. Climate change, the tides, there's so much stuff that matters.
How much rainfall you get,
Absolutely.
I mean, everything.
Everything affects it.
How cold of a winter did you have the year before?
Absolutely.
All those things.
But I think, so what's going to happen now is with these new regulations that have taken place, there's less. I think they cut the commercial licenses in half.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so it's like, and they could always put out as many pots as they wanted. Now there's a limit on the amount of pots that can go out. And so now when they do go to get data, it should be pretty accurate data, like not saying the data was wrong, but there were some gaps here and there. And I think these regulations are going to try to help fill those gaps so that you can have more accurate and educated, data on the species and the population.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Tia, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for the crab episode of the Put 'em Back podcast.